want to commit unto your hands and unto your inspirations and guidance this forum where we are going to share, where we are going to interrogate, where we are going to receive the speeches. We ask you that you may bless the book that is going to be launched. May you challenge and inspire us to appreciate what we can get from African culture in the 21st century, that we are able to see the opportunities and the perspectives, and to generate solutions to the problems facing us and facing Africa. May everything that is going to transpire here be for your greater glory. Bless each and every one of us, and bless the author of our book. We make our prayer through Christ our Lord. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you very much, Elder Chaplain, for that wonderful prayer. Now I would like to invite Reverend Dr. Muita to come and welcome us.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the Department of Religious Studies, it is with great joy that we welcome you to this much anticipated book launch, and we acknowledge your presence being here with us. Feel most welcome. Today, it marks not just unveiling of a remarkable work, but celebration of ideas, culture, and the power of storytelling. We are delighted to have you here with us as we get to kickstart this exciting journey together. Your presence signifies the importance of these events and the collective support for the voices that shape our narrative. Thank you for joining us on this special day. Let us make it a memorable event. You're most welcome.
Very much, Reverend Dr. Muita. Yeah, and as we proceed, and as you have indicated, we want to enjoy the afternoon. So with this, I invite Dr. Mushoki, the Dean of FAS, where our Prof resides, to give us his remarks. Dr. Mushoki.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First, I want to convey the apologies of the very Reverend Professor Stephen Bobu-Wangari, the Vice Chancellor and Rector of the Catholic University of Eastern Africa. He could have liked very much to be with us during this book launch, but unfortunately he's engaged in another meeting outside the university. He's meeting the trustees of the university at the MSA headquarters. So I hope you accept his apologies. Secondly, I would like to welcome all of you to the Catholic University, and particularly to the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, where Professor Mary Getui works with us. He's one of the most senior staff that we have in the faculty, and we are very, very happy for her. I also want to welcome in a very special way the guest speaker, Dr. Gerard Godot, and Reverend Francis Philben. And I would like in a very special way to thank Dr. Gerard, for hosting Professor Mary Getui during her stay in the United States of America during her sabbatical leave when she was working on this book project. the Catholic University of Eastern Africa looks forward for more collaboration with the Center of African Studies. I also want to thank all of you for being here today to celebrate this significant moment, the launch of African culture in the 21st century. It is wonderful to see all of you gathered here, and this is a very remarkable achievement. We are celebrating many things today. We are celebrating African culture, and it is not a coincidence that choir is celebrating 40 years since it started, and we have been holding a series of events. We are celebrating 40 years of faith and excellence in research, knowledge, and service with a global impact. The launch of this book is part of this celebration or celebrations. Research without publication would be an exercise in futility, and it is the only way to disseminate knowledge, and of course it is through publication that we can have a global impact. And this is why I take the launch of this book as part of these celebrations. Writing and editing a book is no small feat. It requires dedication, passion, and amount of creativity. Today we gather here not just to unveil the pages of the African culture in the 21st century, but to dive into the world that Professor Getui and other contributors have crafted. We have an exciting program, and we are looking forward for the overview of the book from the editor, especially for those who have not read the book. And therefore, we want to hear what the readers will hope to take away from it. Before I conclude, I want to take a moment to acknowledge everyone who have supported Professor Getui on this journey. Family, friends, and colleagues, your encouragement has been or cannot go unnoticed. Thank you, and be blessed.
Thank you very much, Dean, for those remarkable remarks, and for your consistency even in the supporting of our professor. So with that, I would like to request Reverend Dr. Mwita to come and give us the way forward as far as our professor's remarks are concerned, and to introduce her to us.
Thank you, Madam MC. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am here to do a very humble exercise, and it is my great honor to introduce a remarkable individual whose contribution to African scholarship and culture are both thoughtful and inspiring. Today, we are privileged to have with us Professor Mary Getui, a celebrated scholar and esteemed editor of the groundbreaking book, African Culture in the 21st Century, Persistence, Opportunities, and Challenge. Professor Mary Getui has dedicated a career to the field of religion, education, and culture, serving as a professor at the Catholic University of Eastern Africa and previously at Kenyatta University, where she held various leadership roles. Ladies and gentlemen, a widespread research and focused on this intersection of religion and contemporary issues, and she has published widely on topics like family, gender, and peace. In recognition of a famous public service, she was awarded the Moran of the Burning Spear in the year 2009, one of the Kenyan's highest honors. Beyond academic achievements, Professor Getui is a passionate advocate for African heritage and community initiative. She currently chairs the Africa Early Childhood Network and has served as the chair of the National AIDS Control Council. As a mentor and a mother to many, Professor Getui exemplifies resilience and strength, inspiring us all to embrace our identities and actively contribute to our cultural discourse. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warmly welcoming Professor Mary Getui to the stage to come and give us the address. Please, we can just stand if possible as she comes in front. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Prof.
Good afternoon. Please take your seats. I'm truly humbled and very happy that all of you have turned up this afternoon to witness the effort of myself and many colleagues that are seated here. You will allow me to recognize the presence of my family. Mr. Getui is somewhere in this group. I have brothers and sisters here. Please, could you stand up? I have children in this congregation. Would you please stand up as well? I'm also a grandmother. I think they are on the way. Those ones can be troublesome sometimes, and some of them are in school. So I acknowledge this team, and thank you very much. Some of you are aware that last week we buried our eldest sister. So I'm truly grateful that this team has come from Kisii. Thank you so much for the support as family. I'd like to recognize Gerald Budu. If you could just wave, stand and wave. Yes. We have interacted with him professionally over many years, and I think it was 2021 when he wrote to me and said, would you like to take the opportunity of scholar in residence to Duquesne University in Pittsburgh? And I was very happy about that invitation, and I'm glad that Catholic University gave me a sabbatical. So 5 months last year was spent in Pittsburgh and 7 months here. And the book that we have today is a product of that effort. So thank you very much, Gerald. And I think that's a message to us about networking and just connecting professionally. There are many people that have contributed towards this book. And I'd like to acknowledge again Gerald, who has done the foreword for the book, and Peter Kanyandago from Uganda. Some of us know him. He has done the preface to our book. The blurbs for the book have been done by Professor Father Lawrence Njoroge, who is right here. Father. We also have Professor Nyaundi, I saw you. Yes, from the University of Eastern Africa, Baraton. Professor Eunice Kamara from Eldoret, from Moi University in Eldoret. I think she'll be with us virtually. And then my student, Dr. Zachary Samita from Kenyatta University. We appreciate your contributions. I'd like to acknowledge the interaction I've had with Michael Kiran, Merinol priest, in the program of the Merinol Institute of African Studies. It is this program which raised a lot of interest in me on issues culture, and that program has been running for a very long time under Tangaza University now. A different name, TAMCAS, but I'd like to acknowledge Michael Kiran and what he has done. I'd like to recognize the contributors who are with us this afternoon. Many of them are with us virtually. Let's see whether we have Elizabeth Isingi, and I saw Dominic Biarugaba. I may not be able to read all that there is here, but they have written about shaping the future values. A relic of today began yesterday in Africa. The second chapter of the book is written by Rachel Chepkemoy. I don't think she's here yet, or she'll be with us virtually. And she has looked at challenges impacting on African cultural values in the 21st century. Chapter 3, done by Samuel Ebale. I saw you here. Thank you very much. He has talked about Ubuntu spiritual philosophy and the reconstruction of our desires future for Africa. I jump chapter 4, I go to chapter 5. This has been done by Lilian Adhiambo. Again, I don't see her here, but she has done something on communication and sexuality for adolescents among the Bantu in central Kenya. Chapter 6 is by Celestia Musili of the University of Nairobi, and she's talking about resilient cultural sensitivities in the 21st century, a case of Akamba indigenous weddings. 7 is done by James Mwita, my head of department, right here. And he's talking about navigating cultural traditions, widows' experiences among the Ameru community in Kenya. Chapter 8 by Lorraine Marceno, again online. She's talking about African culture in the 21st century, destabilizing theological and spiritual challenges in 2 COVID-19 pandemic burials in Kenya. Chapter 9 is about the African concept of sacrifice in the 21st century, persistence, change, challenges, and the future. Father Crispin is right here. He's a member of the Department of Religious Studies. Chapter 10 on cultural values of the Meskel Masada feast in central Ethiopia, regional state. Adane. I smiled because his first name is very long. It's an essay in itself. Yeah. Chapter 11 is importance of ritual in initiation ceremony of Ozo title. Again, persistence, challenges, and the future in Onitsha Igbo Delta State in Nigeria. Sister Maria Aganoke is right here. Thank you very much, sister. Then chapter 12, we have deep wells of African women and the age of resilience, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Sister Petronila, she's right here. Bale, I saw you here. 13, we have cultural change among the Maasai of Kenya with reference to gender roles. Margaret Akinyi, where are you? I saw you come in. Thank you. 14 is towards restoration of Ubuntu-inspired educating communities in Africa. Were Muchuru. Thank you. Chapter 15 is culture, nationalism and politics in Kenya, interlocking facets of an African society. Ken Ombongi from the University of Nairobi. Thank you very much. Chapter 16 is on religious and cultural lessons on the Mugwe for contemporary leadership in Africa. Zablon Tamburi is with us virtually. And let me mention that when I was employed in Kenyatta University, Professor Tamburi was the head of department. So he's my first employer. And he handed me over to Professor, the late Anna Simiu, and told her, take care of this child. I am not sure I am a child anymore. So Zablon Tamburi has played a big role in my life. Chapter 17 is African epistemology, a catalyst for addressing 21st century environmental challenges. Caroline Buya from the Technical University of Kenya. Chapter 18 is African indigenous peace practices among pastoral communities in Kenya. Professor Michael Katola from Kenyatta University. He is joining us online. Chapter 19, we are talking about the potency and flow in African traditional health and healing practices by Sister Bibiana Ngundo, one of us here. Thank you very much, Sister. Then chapter 20, we are talking about Pentecostalism and African traditional religion. Is a member of our department. 21, we are talking about threads of identity, West Africa fabrics, navigating cultural roots and global trends. This is a paper by 3 people. We have James Adeyemi, we have Daud Gambo, and Gabriel Masfa. It's very interesting. This particular chapter even has pictures. So we invite you to have a look. Chapter 22, this is just a narrative and a reflection by Sister Elizabeth Wanyoike. She was our student here, now lives in the US. Many of them my students, several of them my colleagues. It has been back and forth, change this chapter title, do this, do that. A lot of effort. And while I am the editor of this book, a lot of work has gone on behind the scenes, the efforts of very many people. I'd like to appreciate really our being here this afternoon, because together I'm sure we are going to relive, review, and even critique our various cultures. Thank you so much for coming, and may God bless you. I said earlier that I'm a grandmother, and some of my grandchildren, I think, have arrived. If somebody could stand with that baby, I would be happy. Thank you very much. There are very many, and some will be arriving as we go on. So thank you very much. I see members of my church family. I see some of my neighbors. Please feel very, very welcome. Thank you for your time.
Another big round of applause. I have seen some few of my law professors here, and I will just mention their names just in case they can give me a point or two in exam. We have our dean around, Njeri Kang'ethe, asante sana, karibu. Then we have Frida Kabatsi, karibu, yeah, I've seen her there, karibu sana. At this moment, thank you so much, Professor Getui. You know, there are so many books I have enjoyed reading, and that are written by individuals on African culture, traditions, and so on and so forth. This is one I long to read. Thank you very much. And that the preface is written by Professor Lawrence Choroge, asante sana. I have benefited a lot seated every Sunday next to this great man. God bless you and thank you for your presence. And now we move to the next stage where I invite the discussants. But before I invite them to take their seats here, I will invite my teacher, Dr. Wairimu Churu. I was in Tangaza 2005 when it was called Tangaza College. Then later on, it was called Tangaza University College, and most recently, it's Tangaza University. Karibu sana and lead us in this session.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm very humbled to be here, and I didn't know that I had taught a father-in-law. So that is really very, very humbling, and congratulations for the work you're doing. Congratulations, Queer, on being 40 years old and impacting our nation positively. We really do thank God for you. Congratulations, Professor Mary Getui, all the people you gather around you and the people you grow, including myself. I am a student of Professor Mary Getui over many years, and so I just feel so humbled to be here. It's a wonderful moment. We have limited time for this panel, and these are people who read this book with a lot of interest, and I want to give them as much time as possible. So allow me to invite them to come forward as I introduce them, and they take their seats, and then from there we shall talk. The first is a member of faculty here in the Catholic University, Reverend Dr. Peter Mbaro. Reverend Dr. Peter Mbaro, there you are, okay. He's a diocesan priest of the Catholic Diocese of Nyahururu. He has a licentiate in moral theology from this university and a doctorate in social doctrine of the Church from the Lateran Pontifical University in Rome. He's a senior lecturer, and currently he's also the director of the Center for Social Justice and Ethics here in Queer. Karibu sana. Our second discussant is also in Queer, Muthoni Muigu. Muthoni Muigu is a student here in Queer in philosophy, PhD student, an enthusiast of African culture. She has studied Masters in African Studies, Ethics and Organizational Leadership from Tangaza University, and she is very dedicated to transforming individuals and communities through training, dialogue, and mentorship. Karibu Muthoni. Yes, let's welcome them. Our third discussant is Dr. Felix. I think I will refrain from pronouncing his surname. It is difficult. He is, karibu sana. Please come take your seat. He is originally from Ukraine, but now works in the Africa Adventist University of Africa, and he is the dean of the theological seminary there, and he has a doctorate in Old Testament studies. He is married to Lilia, and they have 2 children. Last but not least, Dr. Wineza, Dr. Marceli Wineza. He's a Jesuit priest from Rwanda. He holds a master's and licentiate degree and PhD in systematic theology from Boston College of the Jesuits in the US, and also another master's, an MBA in leadership and management from York St. John University in the United Kingdom. As you may know, he is currently the principal of Hekima University College, which is a constituent college of this great university. And among his many publications is a seminal work, which I enjoy reading, called Risen from the Ashes, Theology as Autobiography. And they are all very well published, but this book is really very special. I wanted to mention it. Yes. Karibuni sana, and I will take a seat beside them and we'll have a little discussion on this work. So as you have heard, the title of the book, African Culture in the 21st Century. When I saw that title again, since I saw it at the beginning as we were asked to write titles, I wondered, now more recently, are there some among us who might wonder, is the African culture still relevant in the 21st century? Because we do meet people who say that it is not. Is it fitting? Is it strange to be discussing African culture in the 20th century? Is the book timely, or is it out of step with reality? I'll let the mic pass along and kindly give short, succinct answers, because we are interested in what you thought.
Thank you very much, and very briefly to congratulate all the authors, and in a special way to congratulate the editor. And to the question is talking about African culture in the 21st century, something of a bygone era or something relevant. If we take culture as a complex way of life, which has dynamism in itself, or a backbone of a community, an existential backbone, then this cannot just be something of a bygone era. It's something that keeps growing. It's not an artifact. It is a reality that is dynamic. And I think this is well captured in the introduction of the book. But at the same time, if you look at some of the topics, I was privileged to be given the section from chapter 9 to 15. And you see, if you speak of sacrifice in the African culture, this is not something that will happen only in the past. It still happens today. And if we were to take sacrifice as a way of making holy, sacrificially, we keep doing that. So it's not past. But at the same time, take initiation, the chapter on initiation. You will also find that initiare is to begin and to continue doing. Again, that means it's not something just to happen, that has happened in the past. It still influences us today. There's another wonderful chapter on the role of women in the book, and women leaders here in Kenya, women leaders in Zimbabwe, who have had influence. Would we say those women would have not influence today? I think I stand to be corrected. They do. I come from Rwanda, where women play an important role today, 64%. So there is a lot to learn from that chapter. You go to the restoration of Ubuntu. So I don't want to take the word alone. The book is of serious currency. Please read it.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to thank you for inviting me to be part of this event, and I want to congratulate Prof. Getui and every contributor to this book. And when I'm asked, is this book relevant or not, of course I can say yes, it is very, very relevant. And do you see, I paid attention not only at the content of the book, but also at the cover that we can see. Oh, no, we cannot see it right now, sorry. But you can see it there. And do you see what I understand? I don't know if I made this cover, but for me, it is very, very symbolic. Because what we can see a kind of a traditional piece of cloth, or I don't know what it is. And there are scissors that are cutting or are going to cut this piece of cloth. And as for me, it is very, very much symbolic. Because when we speak about culture, and I saw it in many articles or many essays of the book, a concern that African culture might be in danger. And there are many, many dangers to every culture, like what we have today, globalization, urbanization. And Africa also survived colonialism, imperialism. And all these are dangers for preserving African culture. So that is why I believe that this book is very, very timely, because it draws our attention to this important issue, that we need to preserve the culture and the background of our ancestors. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shuru. Thank you, Prof. Getui, my lecturer and teacher in African Studies. And thank you for all being interested in an African society in the an African culture in the 21st century. Is it relevant? Mine is, it is crucial we discuss our part as Africans in this 21st century in a book like this, because I had the honor of going through from chapter 1 to chapter 8, and we see various authors, and we cannot thank them more, because they are looking at persistent issues that we have at this day and age, with more the growing of thinkers, and the more we know, the opportunity to continue changing what we think can be changed to suit us in the 21st century. The issue that is discussed in chapter 4 by Professor Getui on the rights, the initiation rights. She offers a thought of alternative, a persistence trend, that we are seeing an alternative rites of passage. An alternative meaning we are still keeping or thinking at the back of our heads that within the 21st century it is not initiation that was, but it still continues persisting, meaning it's disturbing us. Meaning, what should we throw away, or did we throw away everything with the baby, or should we keep the baby, and what are the opportunities that should be discussed in such forums to continue tendering a healthy baby within the 21st century? And therefore, chapter 1, which Nsingi and Biarugaba looks at shaping the future values, the communal values, they are keeping persisting, that even if it's the current trend of globalization, what is it that we can do within communities to work together to participate, to change our environment in a concerted effort? Meaning, are we borrowing from past communal values? And thank you. Let me reach.
Thank you very much. Once again, good afternoon. My name is Fasfatuka, graduate professor, and also the contributors to this great work, African culture in 21st century. And the question is this book timely? Is it fitting to engage in study or discussing African culture? I would like just to underscore that when I went through this book, and especially the first pages, because I could not go read the 296 pages with the limited time that we were given, I was able to pick one thing, and that is that culture defines a people, and that culture gives people an identity. And that, number two, all the writers in this book are just echoing one fact, that culture is like another current river. Though we may not see it every day, but it keeps on flowing. And I think this is what we are seeing from the various chapters that have been written, 22 chapters, and each one of them is singling out an aspect of African culture. And what this book has brought out prominently is that we are able to sustain our cultural heritage irrespective of the trends of change that are driven, as our doctor said, driven by globalization. We are able to sustain our African culture through our different African cultures. Because if you go, for example, to the chapter on the right of passage, different communities engage in different activities as they do, or as they engage our young people from the age of being young to transiting to adulthood. They engage in different practices and different activities, different events. But one thing is that in all these communities, we value a culture of initiation. And that means, therefore, this book is telling us and reminding us we have a background on which we can discuss issues of our identity. The book has come out to say Africans are admired for their cultural heritage. And if you are able to write about an issue from chapter 1 to chapter 22, it's because we still have something that we can take pride on. And therefore, we are celebrating a great work. And I feel that this book is coming at a time when we are being asked to answer this question. Is culture still a valid topic to discuss in academia? And I think what we are hearing today is it is possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Give them a hand. Thank you very much, discussants, for at least opening out that whole factor that African culture is not only relevant, but well and alive, and it is not dead. It is something that we can keep renewing and working with as a resource. I could hear almost the word agency, especially in reference to that chapter about initiation that Prof has written. But so many resources to exploit. And these discussants told me they would like to tell us some of the beautiful little gems they found in there. We can't find all of them for you. You've got to go find them yourselves. But let's see what they found. They like to share some gems. Maybe this time we start from that end of the table, Father Barrow. Is that okay?
It's okay.
Thank
you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Ali. I picked two things, and I will mention them very fast. Number one, I find the pride of an African researcher in this book. Since they have gone through different topics, delving on African culture without any reservation, and of course resisting the external factors that led to say, let this area be shelved. Why? Because like we look at traditional marriage, we look at issues of initiation, then you feel that there are people who will feel that I would like to shy away from this topic. But the academic freedom in this book is to be celebrated. Therefore, I will find the pride of an African researcher. Number two, I have seen in this book a one-stop shop for topics on African culture. These are the two gems that I can underline.
Incredible, wonderful.
Thank you. When we talk about gems, I would want to bring to the audience maybe this picture, the ability, the courage and bravery of some of the disturbing trends that an author can brave about and write. For example, in chapter 3 on Ubuntu spirituality, Ebale Samuel is discussing the effects of imperialism and how it has affected us as Africans, that not only has it affected our spirituality and our identity, but it has gone forth to distort our politics, our education framework, and economic, because of what we have adapted from others. The bravery and the courage is a gem, so that even if he gives a solution of how we are going to revive this, from maybe starting from redefining our symbols, the audience can start thinking of the role of things like subliminal messaging, especially with the current media trends. When he gives a solution of something like redefining even our artifacts, or redefining what we are looking at, rewriting our history as a solution. Wow, I find courage. That to me is a gem. Thank you.
Thank you. So I believe that I benefited more than everyone else from this book, because do you see, I am not African originally, and I have been living here for almost 5 years, and I believe that I already acquainted with African culture, but this book was very much educational for me, because I learned so much new things that I didn't know before. So that is why when you asked to say about like 2 gems, I say no, I found much more gems in the book, and I really enjoyed reading about many different aspects, like for example women in politics, not in politics, in African Jeanne d'Arcs of the past. So it was so exciting to read about those stories, or about transmission of cultural values from one generation to another generation that is endangered now because of the globalization and other issues. And I almost in every chapter I found something that was very, very, very precious and very interesting for me. But I believe that chapter 4 is really very, very important in this book. It was written by Prof. Getui, and the question that she asked is very important. What can we keep in our culture, and what we need to abandon? And I very like the quotation from Kenyatta's book that she mentioned in this chapter, that education will decide what shall we keep and what we shall abandon. And I believe it is very, very important, especially because now we are gathered in the educational institution, and it is our role as educators to educate the new generation so that the right things, good things in culture can be preserved and they can be transmitted to other generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What could be the gems? I think reading a good book is like having a conversation across generations, I would say. So as you read from chapter 1, actually beginning with even of the introduction, to chapter 22, you are having a conversation with generations, not only with the writers, but also the people they cite, they reference. So I found that as a gem. So, and as a teacher, I look at some of the references that have been given, and then it becomes, if tomorrow I am grading a student paper and I don't see this article, I say, please go and read again. And so there is something that comes out of that. So, present and future. At the same time, we look at the content itself, at least in the chapters that have been given, like Crispin Nyandiwa. And it's good that they are here. When I was reading, I thought Crispin is a woman. Now, and as you read the chapter, you see really the intrinsic nature of sacrifice. And that comes out very strongly. If I were to put it in my own words, you take us back to the words of Aquinas on pietas. The respect and the honor we owe to the person who gave us life. Sometimes in French we use piété or pious and can water down. But pietas, I think, it takes it very well. And that comes out very strongly. And why do people offer sacrifice? To avoid calamity, communion with the spiritual world, protection of a society, preservation of life. These are certainly wonderful ideas. And I think they are not of a past era. Then in times of crisis, people offer sacrifices. And this is not only from an African tradition, religions. This cuts across religions. So your chapter will be a reference. Then, I think at the heart of religion, or even cultures more broadly, is a search for meaning. So as you read these chapters, I think there is a way you see that the authors are actually in search of something meaningful. And that cannot be taken away. I think that becomes really a gem. We can just take the example of the importance of ritual initiation, just to give an example. Contextualize and serialize human actions, repetitive actions which give meaning to lives, and then seek to uphold social norms, manage different situations and conflicts, promote moral and social behavior. I think these are arguments that will stand the test of time. I can quote the lady near me here, Wairimu, on the mental colonization that African cultures have faced. So the authors here are not only painting a wonderful picture, they are also showing what colonialism and imperialism and neo-colonialism continues to do. So take it that this is not a book that is just trying to show, can't you see what Africans have done wonderful? There are also challenges. And I think it gives a balance. So alienation that comes with Western education. This still took me back to the novel by Mungoshi in South Africa, in Zimbabwe. You may know the novel where you have one of the characters, Lucifer, who has gone through the education that has been brought by the white. When he goes back to the village, he doesn't want to associate with anyone. Mungoshi. So even as we educate, how do we inculturate our education? I think that comes from this book. So I would say congratulations to the authors, and once again, please buy the book.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I cannot even summarize what you said. Very much. I continue to be challenged as an educator. Thank you very much. I cannot even summarize what you very much. Because history will judge us very harshly if we don't rise to the moment. Thank you very much. I think history will judge us very harshly. Thank you very much. Now, I have what is judged to combine my last two questions to the panel in order to have a little bit of time and enable you if you have a comment or a question to raise. We don't promise answers, but we will certainly want to hear something from the floor. So, but you know, they say the Holy Spirit comes to console the disturbed and to disturb the comfortable. So I was wondering, and I think Father Marcel already started addressing that, is there something disturbing in the book? Mindful that, you know, being disturbed is not always bad. Eh? Is there something in the book we should expect that might rock our boat? Discussions. Father Ueniza, you can complete your thought and then move the mic along. Asante.
One area I think that we need to work on is the issue of patriarchy. I think really the male domination still remains across many African parts. And so if we want to evolve, we have to really promote the voice or amplify the voice of women. Now I think that's what I thought cuts across some chapters and sometimes maybe glossed over, but the patriarchy, I think, is an evil that needs to be challenged.
Sorry, the question I wanted to provide is the last one, which is about the contribution to scholarship. I think some of it has kind of been said, but feel free to take it because we won't give you the mic again directly. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The question is really very, very much important. So if you speak about distributing things, I already expressed it and I just want maybe to emphasize it again. So what is really concerns me about any culture, not only African culture, because of the globalization, so we are losing our cultures, and let us acknowledge it. So one that I didn't find in the book, but maybe I would like this chapter to be written, is about the language. So do you see maybe in 25 years some of African languages will be extinct already because people don't speak them anymore. And language is a kind of a repository of culture. So if we lose language, we will lose our culture. And I know many people who can still speak their languages, but their children do not speak mother tongue anymore. And it is a trend of losing our culture. And when we speak about the contribution, what I also enjoyed reading the book, it has 2 chapters about Ubuntu. And I need to acknowledge that I knew this word even before I came to Africa, but I didn't know what it means. Yes, because I remember a long time ago it was an operational system that was called Ubuntu. And only when I came to Africa I understood the meaning, the real meaning of this word. And what I want to tell you, I really appreciate Ubuntu culture and Ubuntu philosophy. And I came from the individualistic society, where this idea of Ubuntu is completely lost. And when I read, for example, the Bible, and when we read the book of Acts, what I can see there, I can see the spirit of Ubuntu when all the believers have everything in common and they live together and they enjoy this life. But what happened in 2000 years of Christian history? Christianity lost, unfortunately, this spirit of Ubuntu. And what I see in the book, so a long time ago, colonization came and they brought something to Africa. Some of their culture was brought to Africa. Something was good, something most probably was not good. But I believe now the time has come when Africa can give something to Western countries and can introduce to them back this philosophy of Ubuntu that they had, but they lost right now. And I believe it is a kind of a call for action for all of us that we can restore the spirit of Ubuntu and share it with others. Thank you.
Thank you. On the issue of something disturbing, I don't know, maybe let me share with you so that you see whether I'm disturbed for nothing. And it's good we are in this context of the church. The church is represented here well. When chapter 6 mostly discusses the indigenous preference of the Akamba community of weddings in comparison with contemporary weddings that are church, and he emphasizes the notion of doing it in the church, that sometimes it's distorted. You have even this ability of lies, which is a common phenomenon now. and we have what he discusses as mpango wa kind of secret affairs even going on when you have done a church wedding, and when he mentions about the indigenous Kamba weddings have the ability of blood covenants. They are respected. And then it's good this is coming when Justice Maraga is here. You know why? Sorry, you will correct this is a by the way remark from when we were growing stories from my dad, especially political, they used to be given verbatim and sometimes create fun. So I'm not very sure whether this happened. You can correct my assumption. During Kibaki's regime, when he was cleaning the judiciary, there's this lot of maybe magistrates that it was said they were not ethical, and he had to do away with them for a while so that they were investigated. And I don't know whether it's a magistrate or it's a judge that said instead of swearing by the Bible, he will bring, I think, his elders from Luya community to swear by them. That case reached there. You know, like I do not know the factual of that case, but although just like a myth, why would you I'm disturbed by the fact that as a religious person, in terms of being a Christian, why should I forego some of the tenets that we swear by and go deeper back? That it's just a soliloquy. It's a question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What is disturbing in this book? I think we need just to read it with an open mind, and we'll be able to pick what need to be filled in if there are some gaps. However, today we are talking about inclusion, and inclusion is being considered as a value today because we are in a multicultural society where cultures influence each other. And these days we are talking about living in a society where we have blended culture. What perhaps is going in my mind is how far should this inclusion be pushed in our life? In all the 22 chapters, because Africans are not living in isolation from other communities. We are moving, we are migrating. That's why in chapter 22, Sister Elizabeth, Dr. Elizabeth talks about being at home, away from home. Definitely, when people migrate and they settle in a certain place, they consider adapting to the culture of that setting. But now, when people say we want to get included in this community, then there are trade-offs. There is a give and take. Now the question is, in all these discussions that we have in this book, especially chapter 1, where we are talking about shaping future values. Which are those future values that we are shaping? How adaptive are we going to be? How inclusive are we going to be? So that we can then shape those future values. But we have those values today that we are taking pride in, that gives us identity. Because we are reminded by the Kiswahili saying, mwacha mila ni mtumwa, meaning that if we give I don't want a 51%, then we start now becoming slaves. maybe if you have given 20%, you're still having our identity. Anyway, that is it. We have to ask ourselves. That has to disturb us. That's why even in chapter, in chapter 2, challenges impacting African cultural values. What are these challenges? Where are they coming from? In fact, they are coming from this ideology. Now I change from value and I go now to ideology. We are talking about ideology of inclusion, meaning that we have now to let go that which we value and that which gives us identity. And then once we do that trade-off, and then we are now being driven and pushed by this ideology of inclusion, then we find ourselves losing that which defines us. And in fact, when I was going through this question about what it disturbs, I went to chapter 5 on perspectives and practice on sex and sexuality communication. And I will tell this audience here today, we know what we are going through, and especially on comprehensive sex education that is being introduced in schools. And we are talking about teenage, young people, the teenagers. So this ideology, how much pain is it causing in our minds and in our hearts? We who are saying we must be custodians of the values of African culture. Last but not the least, in this book, definitely a lot of references were done from already written works. There was a time we ran a conference here on African orality. Did we perhaps think about capturing the value of African oral tradition? Because we are losing quite a number of values, because we sometimes say, if it is not documented in a book, then it is not. But I think for us, that is not the way we have been brought up. We know that the stories that are told, the poems that are recited, the idioms that are, kept on the lips of Africans that they communicate, they carry the values. So those are a few things that I would like to say about the disturbance. What about the last one? Because you are combining, I am now concluding by saying this is a book that is worth having in an academia. I teach culture and peace building in Africa at master's level, and I'm going to give the first assignment using this book. Thank you.
Wonderful. We have market already. we have market already for this book. We are very happy to hear that. Patriarchy, a point of concern. And I want to tell you, this concern that Ubuntu could even be forgotten is not very far-fetched. I have attended a conversation in an academic institution where the African scholars present did not understand Ubuntu. They thought it's a Bantu concept, not an all-Africans concept. So we are in times when we are busy losing what is most precious. And the question would be, is it really possible for an African to fully understand the gospel without reference to our Ubuntu way? And would we be at home? For me, I would wonder whether that really is possible, because we'll be standing without feet. I will let Father Wineza say one last thing, because I did not give him due regard, and then I hope the mics can be moved in case the audience has a few comments.
Thank you very much. As you look at the title, African Culture, it is very easy to say, why do you put it in singular? And some people can easily put the book aside. So I like it that you have put in a way that is provocative. And I say this because we published the book in Rwanda recently, and some people, even without having read it, they made that to say, I don't like the title. Please take the book and read, and you will see that actually the title fits. So the book is not trying to present some homogeneity. You will go to Ethiopia, you will go to Zimbabwe, you will go to Kenya, you will go to Uganda, and yet you still find a common thread. So I think that it was wonderful that you actually didn't say African cultures. And those who may want to put aside the book, which culture are they talking about? answer yourself to that question after you have read. So that would be one. At the same time, also we are in a generation where actually we probably also need to talk of e-culture, internet culture. So if I was to write a chapter in this book, maybe that chapter is also needed in generations of young people who actually you will find them just on internet, on WhatsApp, on social media. We speak of orality, and even our way of writing is also being challenged. Very soon you will be getting writings in emojis, right? So even what type of writing are we talking about? And even as you speak, is being challenged. You send a message to someone and he sends just an emoji and he feels that you are going to understand. So there is even a challenge.
Our discussants, and I'm not asking them to sit down yet in case you raise something that we cannot handle. So the mic is already in the field. Anybody want to say something? There's a hand right at the back. It was so fast, it's better get the mic. Thank you very much. We'll take one other besides after Father speaks.
Thank you very much. First of all, I congratulate Professor Mary Getui for this eye-opener that has brought the community. At the same time, I have what we can call positive jealousy. I wish that, as Father Marcel said, that he has no topic that's left out. I wish that Father Professor Getui involved me to participate in this wonderful academic contribution. Now what am I going to, what can disturb me is that term ubuntu. In my mother tongue is ubuntu. Then that just involves humanity. When you say an African is more human than anybody else, I intend to disagree. That humanity is not only in Africans, it's in Europeans, it's in Asians, in everybody. A further search is needed. Last but not least, in that we're just talking about very positive things. We're not talking about witchcraft, which is a burden to humanity. We're not talking about cattle wrestling, how we have so many things to talk about. So my suggestion that this should be volume 1. So that we begin the volume 2, 3, 4. When Mary Getui is not there, others will continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Volume 2 coming. We've got a hand here. Maybe as you pass by so we get a feminine voice, you give the mic over there and then we'll take over here.
What has inspired me about the book to begin with is the editor. I think I saw Africa. There is so much Africa in Professor Getui that you can read fast before you read the book. But maybe the point I want to bring is, for me, I'm very much at home with the book because I have found every solutions to the problems of the people that I've been dealing with in the African culture. Our culture is so rich that if you go back, if you're confronted with a situation in the African context, and you really go back to who you are as an African and read what has been written about Africa, you are home and dry. So for me, yes, those who are calling for more volumes, let us write them. Thank you very much.
As we write more volumes, I can tell you she speaks with authority. She's very much on the ground. Very nice to hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor, congratulations. I'm humbled as a professor of environmental science in the subject or discipline of pharmacognosy to have been invited to contribute chapter 1. And on that note, I call upon gallant academicians. Let's our heroes to different faculty, different discipline, and different subject. While reading my PhD at the University of Cape Town, whether you are doing law, religious studies, pharmacy, medicine, or anything, the first course is philosophy of science and African problems. No matter, this is the best university on the continent. Within that chapter, as I wind up, you will see me and Liz allude to the fact that reading and writing began on a continent which I don't know. Professor, congratulations. I'm sorry I can't continue with you. I have to fly to Cape Town. Have a good evening.
Thank you very, very much indeed. And it's a wonderful note to be ending on. Although I'm seeing the mic moving, the mic must stop. So we'll take that as our last comment. Thank you.
It hasn't stopped.
Please speak.
Okay, I beg your indulgence to speak seated. And before I congratulate Professor Getui and team, I wish to recognize the presence of three thought shapers who are in this congregation. The Chief Justice Emeritus, the Honorable Chief Justice David Maraga, Reverend Professor Lawrence Njoroge, and my sister, Reverend Dr. Nyambura Njoroge, who is participating online, because they are people who have contributed to this conversation. I haven't read the book, but synopsis of the chapters are quite exacting, so it's going to be a reading list for the law school. But this a catch here, Mary, this is a quid pro quo. When you do the second edition of this book, the law school would want to say something about what action we've taken to inculturate a profession and a practice that's purely Anglo-Saxon in nature. We would like to share what we are doing now as we teach Ubuntu in the context of international human rights, how we are teaching gender rights, taking both our women and men to amplify their voices where they have been muted before, as Africans do. Also our notions of justice as we do what we call alternative dispute resolution, which actually is a dispute resolution. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And also to let you know that Professor Getui is a great friend of the law school, and she's a great mentor. She's had many disciples there. So I bring the whole law school with me here. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much for your comments in the audience. We are completely out of time, so we do have to stop. This is the first book I ever had that we asked for volume 2 before we sold the first copy. Prof, your job is cut out for you. The law school wants to have several chapters. Further there, we have work to do, and I think we are set for it. Congratulations once again. Can we give a hand to our discussants again as we allow them to go back? Asanteni sana. You can go back to your seats. Thank you for opening the conversation for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me just get my notes ready here so that I don't miss any point. I want to say, what a book, what a panel of discussants. And you'll all agree with me that the panel did the book justice, despite the short time they had. We have also noticed that what makes this book, a great read, is its unique character. Namely, that it's a library, it's a gem. In it, it contains several perspectives in African culture and in this 21st century. Kumbe, mwachanila ni mtumwa. Asante sana. And before I invite Dr. James Muita to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Gerard, let me recognize a very important guest in our midst. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my distinct honor to recognize the presence of a remarkable leader and a distinguished jurist, the former Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, CJ David Maraga. He is renowned for his unwavering commitment to justice and the rule of law. Justice Maraga has been a transformative figure in the Kenyan judiciary. His tenure was marked by courageous decisions and a steadfast dedication to upholding the rights of all citizens. As we recognize his presence this afternoon, let us also reflect on his invaluable contributions to our legal system and the lasting impact he has made on our nation. Above all, he is a man of faith, a true embodiment of justice, the name and honor he carries after his name. Please join me in recognizing the presence of CJ David Maraga in our midst with a round of applause. Mzee, nimekuwa nikikuona tu kwa TV leo. Today I see the man himself. I still remember that decision. So karibu sana, karibu sana. We are honored to have you in our presence, and actually your presence alone makes this book sellable. So now I want to invite Dr. James Muita to introduce our guest of honor.
Thank you. Thank you, our MC. Our former Jay is a friend to choir, a neighbor to choir. I remember very well a few years ago, he was gracing one of our graduation ceremony. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, indeed, we apologize to have stopped the mic going round. But this is because still we have a guest speaker who has traveled from far and wide. And today we are privileged to have Dr. Gerard Budu. Dr. Budu is a native of Trinidad and Tobago. Please forgive me for how I pronounce it. It can mean different things in different places. He owns a PhD in religious studies. He serves in different capacities, just to single out, yes, and a don't share in African Studies, and a founding director of the Center for African Studies at Digwin University of the Holy Spirit. He is a contributor to many scholarly avenues, and to single out, he has key understanding of theology and liberation, which are very key and profound He is a founding member of both the Conference on Theology in Caribbean today and the World Forum on Theology and Liberation. Our guest speaker today, he is honored to sit here with us and to come and to advance across African culture and theology. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, allow me, as you just give him support, to come here and speak to us. Please welcome Dr. Bodo.
So Trinidad and Tobago, right? A very good afternoon to all the distinguished guests, distinguished administrators, faculty, alumni, family, friends, and anybody else. Habari marafiki. Ni habari zenu? Mzuri, sawa sawa. So I will go into this right away because I know time is running out. But what sparked this reflection in me is that COVID-19 sort of dictated how people related to space, place, and prioritize the role of space in our relationships with each other. So post-COVID, I asked myself, how, if we continue to prioritize space and place, does it change our religious and cultural sensibilities? Now I'm going to go back to a TV show that will tell you how old I am. The beginnings of Star Trek. For those of you who are familiar with it, in the 60s. And the opening monologue in those shows was space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. It's a 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life, new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before. And imagine the music, da, 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 right? Okay. It was an expansive imagination, recognizing the vastness of the universe, though with a colonial mindset, that presented new worlds and galaxies as devoid of meaningful habitation, until human interaction, of course, made it meaningful. But I find this imaginary interesting in relation to the situation where, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we were forced to find and create new frontiers while maintaining location, and we're not encouraged to explore new spaces. The pandemic forced populations to adjust and perhaps rediscover differing ways to relate to the places that we inhabited. And different from the voyage to find new civilizations and life, as in Star Trek, the guidance that we were given were to shelter in place, socially distance, and be wary of others. Okay. Yeah. These two impulses, both to go out in Star Trek and to stay in place because of the pandemic, seem opposed to one another. But upon inspection, they do emphasize how perspectives on space and our understanding of how to relate to spaces significantly shape and define our trajectories. And upon even further inspection, the two trajectories also expose how not only our perception of, but our material relations to spatial locations shape and reorient us on a continuous basis. Now, attempts to relocate in the sense of inhabiting and attending to our locations more intimately as a result of various pandemic lockdowns, inhibitions, and discontinuities in social, cultural, educational, and economic activities were experienced and met with a wide range of responses, generally between accepting or not accepting the influence of the pandemic in our lives. But I suspect all of the responses expressed were responses to being dislocated. In the sense of not being able to attend to customary locations and activities as was done previously. So, the strategies of relocation engaged were shaped by the manner of the dislocations experienced and known. For example, because of the limiting of gatherings, most churches did not have physical services but virtual ones. The space of the sacred that had been taken over by the church building was now relocated to the family home around a technological tool that could convey the sacraments and blessings usually reserved to the physical space of the church. A host of theological questions arise from this, but most importantly, the importance and role of location and space come to the forefront. If the home is a valid location for sacramental delivery, why should the church building be privileged? Especially in times when churches in the West and many other parts of the world are closing because of membership and financial issues. What does a parish or parochial era or location mean when we receive the sacraments at home? The attention to relocation as a result of dislocation raises questions about what was dislocated from in the first place, and opens avenues for creating epistemologies generated by these relocated spaces. Location matters and cannot be easily substituted, as any immigrant will tell you. I use known in the previous paragraph in a very broad sense, and not as a necessary correlate to fact, but more as a correlate to conviction, mainly because of the growing recognition that knowledge and epistemology are heavily dependent on facts one believes to be the case. We see this in the colonial attitudes of the so-called Enlightenment European philosophers and colonial regimes in their belief of superiority in civilization, as well as in the reception and manipulation of scientific understandings of the COVID-19 pandemic. That the former, colonial regimes, can disguise violence as peaceful and benign development of peoples, and the latter, COVID-19, can dispute the disease burden and simple mitigation methods used to control the disease, indicates that we have long been on a road whereby knowledge accords not to facts, but to convictions. Arguing whether this should or should not be the case seems to me to be based on an ethical hierarchy that is regulatory in fashion and solely dependent on any dominant civilizational epistemological perspective. I'm also aware that when one begins to talk about space and spatiality, especially here in Africa, they're talking about land. Space, but also place. And though there's been significant work done in theories in this area, it's something that has to be looked at again. This area, in addition, it's something that costing of space and time plus area. In addition, it's something costing of space and time plus area. In addition, it's something costing of space and time plus area. Excuse me, looking at this here. Such that geographers, philosophers, historians, theologians, and thinkers in many other fields insist on this deep connection between time and space and the importance of holding them together. While not denying the importance of temporality in understanding our current situation, I would like to provincialize it and delink its significance from space so that we can recognize more clearly the impact of location on epistemological generation and expression. Indeed, with the dominance of globalization and neoliberal capitalism as prominent markers of our world order, the enhanced impact of social media attention the enhanced impact of social media, attention to location has become both reflexive and misleading. It's reflexive in that with the vast array of choices, influences, external and internal pressures brought to bear on local, regional, and international communities, persons and groups tend to go to their default position or location, physically and epistemologically, and reach out to like-minded interests, not those who think differently from them. This produces more isolation and more intense pockets of identity-creating cultures, even as they begin to have larger voices, especially through social media. It's misleading in that the focus on space and globalization is determined by its commodified value, and therefore from market-driven conceptions of its utility. Space, then, is not valorized because of its culture of life, but because of its commodified market value, and we see this in the real estate market. The prioritization of translocal contemporaneity, like the various stock markets, has elevated temporal transactionality as a measure of locatedness, to the point that locatedness is understood more in temporal terms, that is, getting somewhere at the same time, rather than in spatial terms, getting something done in the same place, no matter how vast. Here, I would like to examine the phenomenon of quantum entanglement that's been done in quantum physics some years ago, as a way of delinking time and space and to understand the locality of space. So what is quantum entanglement? It is a physical phenomenon whereby particles that have been entangled and then separated exhibit properties that cannot be described independently of each other, even at great distances, so that actions performed on any one of these particles affects the other in exactly the same way, and presumably at the same time. The phenomenon cannot be explained by any known means of communication, since the occurrences have been observed in controlled contexts that would require communication faster than the speed of light. The phenomenon, theoretically, should also occur irrespective of distance, so that entangled particles at opposite ends of the galaxy should react and interact in the same manner. What might this imply? To my mind, there are two main implications. First, that space is local. There's not something out there. It's ours. So that, while physicists may see entanglement as an example of quantum non-locality, in the sense that it cannot be explained by local realistic theory, it can also be termed quantum non-separability, which to my mind does not verify it as a non-local phenomenon, but as an inexplicable one, and one that can very well change our notions of what local means. And second, at least at the quantum level, time as a measurement of movement and change in space is problematic, especially if the reaction is instantaneous. Which is the first point, space is local. What is meant by saying that space is local? Is this a new way to understand globalization? Does it make the uniqueness of various geographic communities superfluous? Is it a reification of translocality? I would answer no to all of the above questions. That space is local instead points to the non-hegemonic character of space, such that the inexplicability of the interconnectedness of quantum entanglement indicates that such phenomena need not be explained by an overarching theory to recognize its possibilities. Einstein referred to it as spooky action at a distance, before experiments confirmed the phenomenon after his death. And though the phenomenon remains inexplicable, the acceptance of its veracity has been the basis of successful quantum teleportation of information experiments at Yokohama National University in Japan about 4 years ago, which is creating new avenues in quantum computing and information technology. What the scientists at Yokohama University call quantum teleportation is a transfer of information into an otherwise inaccessible space that permits a transfer of information into a quantum memory without revealing or destroying the stored information. This slide adds another layer of description to its non-hegemonic character, in that the interconnectedness of space is not only in relation to what is accessible, but also to what adds another layer of description to its non-hegemonic character to be so. Meaning, while inaccessibility or perceived inaccessibility to space but also to what is inaccessible, spaces can be influenced or affected, such influence, however, cannot be subject to control via an explicable systematic theory. This aligns with the already agreed upon understanding that scientific theories and facts are not predictive, but based on a conviction of high probability. That word conviction comes in again. Weather forecasting, I think, is the best example of this. The claim is going to rain in the next, oh, it's supposed to not have rain this whole weekend. 3 days without rain. Right? The word conviction, as I said, comes up again. and highlights the tenuous and relative character of explanatory models. This is not negative in connotation, rather, it reinforces its non-hegemonic character and allows for wider spatial interpretations and inhabitation. A second layer of description, which may seem counterintuitive to its non-hegemonic character, but actually isn't, and is implied by quantum entanglement, is that we are always in, with, related to, alongside, shaped by, or shaping spaces. There is no outside of space for us. We are always interfering subjects to the phenomenon we are experiencing, starting from individualized solipsistic units, moving in vector quantities toward groups of units. The implications of this are far-reaching in that it belies the epistemological starting point of modern attempts in understanding the other in terms of race, gender, diversity, and inclusion. It also changes the spatial imagery of identity and belonging in that the boundaries and borders are more permeable and connected to what and who we hitherto considered inaccessible and radically different, and questions the possibility of the identity and individuality of systems. Secondly, is there space without time? What does it mean to say that one implication of quantum entanglement is that time as a measurement of movement or change in space is problematic? Does it mean that at the quantum level time does not exist, or that time as we understand it does not exist, or that time has differing qualities and quantities at the quantum level? Whatever the answer to this is, it is clear that our customary understanding of time does not pertain, that a delinking from temporality on the level we experience in our ordinary lives has occurred. In other words, time is not a determinant nor measure of the entangled occurrence. So while space at whatever level is necessary for the experiment, time is not. What might this suggest? First, time can be deprioritized. Second, it can be delinked from space epistemically and physically. And third, we need to think of time not as measuring space, but as contingent upon space and generated by it. No space, no time. No time, you still have space. Vin Deloria's God is Red, written about 20 years ago, is an early attempt at deprioritizing time in our epistemological viewpoints. Though the text targets religiosity more specifically, it also speaks to temporally dominant viewpoints and attempts to indicate how we would benefit from deprioritizing time. Deloria wanted a radical shift in outlook from our present naive conception of this world as a testing ground of abstract morality to a more mature view of the universe as a comprehensive matrix of life forms. Pretty much like Ubuntu. One way to do this is to revalorize indigenous epistemologies, especially our prioritizing of spaces and locations as markers of their understanding of reality and the matrix of relationships they generate. The use of time to relativize and deprioritize space creates the possibilities of hegemonic absolutes that run counter to what is generated by locations and activities in many locations. Deloria's text adequately suggests the real possibility of deprioritizing time and the fact that various groups throughout the world did have these viewpoints as their guiding epistemologies. And as a consequence, they had differing understandings of time, which provincialized temporality as well. Deprioritizing time, therefore, allowed for differing conceptions of temporality based on the different locations out of which they were generated. It raises the awareness of locality and focuses questions on how we should understand where we are. Again, this is something that this text is an attempt to do. African culture in the 21st century. Clearly, that time is not a factor in the entanglement of particles illustrates that time can be delinked from space. There can be experiences of space without or outside of time. While narratives of time travel appear to rely on the prospect of controlling space by means of time, looked at differently, it really indicates that time is irrelevant and moving through space is what matters. In other words, if one can access different places in different periods, is this really about using time or about accessing space? If, as we mentioned at the end of the last point, different locations have differing understandings of time, it's very plausible that one can travel through time simply by traveling in space. Global travel today confirms this point. I am 7 hours ahead of where I was. Time travel. So one can delink time from space, both epistemically, in terms of how we think about its relation to space, and physically, by how we travel in space. Given the last 2 points, I think it also follows that in deprioritizing time and delinking it from space, we are making it contingent on space and not a measure of it. This is crucial because since Aristotle, we have understood time generally in most of our educational constructs as a measurement of space. Using the speed of light to measure the distance between planets and stars seems to reinscribe this way of thinking. Quantum entanglement calls this into question and gives us a physical instance where time is not a factor in measuring movement and activity. Nor can it be explained using Augustine's psychological theory of time, since again, time is not a factor determining the movement of the entangled particles. So space without time is possible. Time without space is not. As I end, I just want to give 4 markers, I think, of what I call spatial epistemologies, prioritizing space over time. The attempt to prioritize space and spatial epistemologies can be developed along the lines I would claim of 4 markers, which flow out of the freeing of location from temporal design and paying attention to what is generated by location as a priority for epistemic valorization. Again, this is what the book does. First, space is not confessional. Second, space is non-ethical, but meaning-driven or emotional. Third, space is eclectic or hyper-scientific, but not meant in the artificial intelligence way. And fourth, space deprioritizes human agency. That space is not confessional seeks to display how space can generate belief systems, but that in turn these belief systems cannot own, both religious and cultural, cannot own, limit, or control the direction, recognition, and valorization of what is generated. To highlight this, one can point to the many independent churches on this continent and on other continents that create inter- and intra-religious relations that enhance the epistemic range of religious expressions generated by spaces, not only in quantity, but in terms of interconnectivity. So space doesn't care whether you're Catholic or Methodist or Seventh-day Adventist or Evangelical or Hindu or Muslim, whether you're man, woman, whether you're African, Indian, Asian, or Caribbean, because when it hits you, it hits you. It's not asking a question before you get hit, right? And when you go into space, you're not asked about these questions. So it really doesn't care, in some ways, who you are. The second marker, the non-ethical character of space, can be explained if one recognizes the basis of modern ethical systems in the European Enlightenment, and specifically Kant, as devoid of spatial content and primarily empty concepts, to use Kant's own words, and purely for regulatory purposes. Remember that in Kant's and Hume's racist worldviews, these regulatory and religious structures were mainly to control people, and especially non-Europeans. The deconstruction of ethics, and not as another ethical principle, will help to explore this. It's interesting that indigenous societies lived for millennia without anything called ethics. And it's only when ethics came in, we had colonization and globalization. It's quite interesting. The third marker, space is eclectic, intends to display how thematizing space is not a systematic endeavor, but subject to the contours of space and therefore hyper-scientific, but again, not in the sense of the hyper-science of artificial intelligence and data crunching. While we want to categorize and control space and are doing our best to domesticate it, disasters, climate change, and all of these issues indicate that it is ultimately uncontrollable and requires us to relate to space and spaces with flexibility, humility, and a listening ear. The fourth marker, the deprioritization of human agency, delinks Imago Dei and the attendant human hubris or pride of being made in the image and likeness of God, and seeks to explore geo-epistemologies in order to relocate epistemic endeavor in spatial modalities, in ways of understanding space. The Greek epistene, understood as that which is attached to what is caused to stand or made known, which is a root of episteme, hence epistemology, should be attached to not just a selected view of what is known, but to the wide variety of produced knowledges encountered and deliberately submerged in our ecologies. So I just present these 4 markers very briefly and not yet filled out, to show that if we do prioritize our spatial epistemologies, we take up locatedness seriously, we end up with books like this. And we end up with a different way of understanding both our religious and cultural sensibilities. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, our guests, for that remarkable award that was brought to us. And now I'd like to request the Dean, Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, Dr. Muchoki, to come and give us a message. So I would like to request the Dean of Faculty of Science of Arts and Social Sciences, Dr. Mushoki, to come and give us a word from the DVC Academic Affairs.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I will just take 2 minutes. There's a message here from the acting Deputy First Chancellor in charge of Academic Affairs and Research, Professor Peter Koros. Esteemed Professor Getui, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is both an honor and a privilege to stand before you today as we gather to celebrate the launch of Professor Getui's remarkable book, African Culture in the 21st Century. As the Acting Deputy First Chancellor for Academic Affairs and Research, I recognize the profound importance of this work. In a rapidly changing world, African culture serves as a vital thread that connects our past to our present, to our future. Professor Getui's exploration of the resilience and adaptability of our cultural heritage is not only timely but essential. This book dives into the multi-faced nature of our identities, shedding light on both the challenges we face and the opportunities that lies ahead. It invites us to reflect on our rich traditions while also embracing innovation and progress. In acknowledging the persistence of our cultural narratives, we find strength in our diversity. Professor Getui's insights will undoubtedly inspire new conversation, foster collaboration, and encourage future generations to take pride in our cultural heritage. Let us celebrate this achievement. It is more than just a book. It is a beacon of hope and a call to action for all of us to engage with and elevate African culture in the 21st century. Congratulations, Professor Getui, on this significant milestone. I look forward for the discussions that will arise from your work and to see how it will influence our cultural landscape. Thank you, Professor Peter Koros, Acting Deputy First Chancellor, Academic Affairs and Research. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Once again, I'd like to invite Dr. Moita to give us a way forward as we await the book. Yes. So as we want to bring the book in, you can tell us something.
Thank you once again. Ladies and gentlemen, we are getting towards the tail end of our event, and at this particular moment, I would like to welcome Dr. Getui, the Director for Communication and International Relations, Choir, to come in front so that now we can prepare ourselves to go to the next level of the event. Please welcome. Please appreciate him as he comes forward.
God is good, and all the time. So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed, may I take this opportunity to welcome you to the Catholic University of Eastern Africa. This is actually a very remarkable moment for all of us. Choir is celebrating 40 years, and this is a sign of excellence. And we welcome you. We have quite a number of activities that are lined up as we progress towards, as the year progresses. So if you're here with us today, we welcome you for a cup of tea. Anytime you're around, please, karibuni sana sana sana. I'm very serious about it. You might be hungry and you're coming from Rongai. Step in. And it won't be something simple, huh? So karibuni sana. So mine is a very simple calling. The book today, that title, if you think about it, and I want to resonate with what Father Concord shared earlier about chapter 2, 3, if you noticed, wakati mwingine kilitolewa kutoka kwake, for those who understand Kiswahili, which is part of our culture. Chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, the mic was taken away from him when he was in chapter 7. Yeah? I want to be in chapter 2 also. Why? Because we want some disruption in the African culture, especially the centuries that are coming. Why am I saying this? A day is coming, and you will bear me witness, when a Meru, let me speak first where I come from, will be called Nyaribo Mamburi. It's a mixture of Kisi and Taita. We will hear of Njeri Omolo. Not because you belong to any mixed cultures. You are pure Luo, pure Kikuyu, pure Embu, pure Taita, pure Pokomo. But the disruption is so high that we will be sharing names. When I was doing my PhD somewhere in this world, I was being asked, you don't have a Christian name? Then in the corridors again, don't you have an English name? So which is which? Is it a Christian name? Is it an English name? So I tell them, no, we are going to Tonga Mredi. Are you baptized? Yes. Yeah. Because personally I was baptized at the age of 16. Our mother told us, you go decide. If you want to become a Muslim, it's up to you. If you want to become a Christian, Catholic, Methodist, whatever, a Hindu, feel free. So we could add a name then. Yeah, so I decided to go the Catholic way. So mine is to actually congratulate Professor Getui. Thank you very much. We've been part of the team that has prepared session, and it has been an honor. It has been a learning lesson. They always say, if you know more, what did Maya Angela say? When you know more, when you know more, leo mtapata opportunity ya kuwafunza. When you know more, you do more. You do more. If you know more, you do more. Ukiwa unajua, unatenda zaidi. So this is not only a book for knowledge, but a new perspective. This is not only a new angle of thinking, a book for knowledge, welcome you, but a new actually participate, a new angle of thinking, and the reading, and the catches, and any value addition. We'll always have a feedback platform for the book. That I can promise you on behalf of Prof. So may I take this opportunity, first of all, to welcome our librarian, Catholic University of Eastern Africa, Dr. Sam Macharia. Please come forward so that you'll be the first to bless the book. Mtu sema mtuza kwao, mcheza kwao, hutuzwa. Welcome, Daktari.
On human rights.
Asante. May I take this opportunity also to invite Dean, Faculty of Law, Wakili Njeri. She's left. Okay, we have a book for her, so the rest of the team members can always speak. May I take this opportunity to also request you, if you have any other